Hope everyone's doing well. Welcome to MAGIA Mindset. Today's guest is none other than Derek Broadley, Youth Director at Crystal Palace, which participated in the EPL and the Championship Division within England. Now he's on the East Coast as the Youth Director of Charleston Battery, an affiliated to USL team. Let's roll the intro. Derek, how are you doing?
Very well, and you?
Good. Thank you for joining us.
No problem at all.
It's truly, I know it's busy during this time, and I truly appreciate it and making this time and kind of talking some soccer, sharing some experiences. I think it's very always reassuring. How's everything going before we start? How's everything going out there? And are you in Charleston?
Yeah, I'm actually in Knoxville right now doing this, but I'm based in Charleston. Obviously, we have a return to play mandate for June the 1st, so we're all getting ready for that. But I commute. I have some personal things I deal with here in Knoxville, so I just came up for the weekend.
How is it everything with the Corona pandemic out there?
No, I mean, things are starting to get back to a little bit like normal, like life, but not soccer. No, there's still nothing. You've got a few road people doing some one-on-one stuff, I think, and but apart from that, no, it's still pretty quiet. And there's some. I think as we get talking, I think this pandemic's really given people some time to think, and I think that if people do the right thing, the game could come out of it a lot better than it went into it. But time will tell if that's the case.
Fantastic. So let's get things going. Again, appreciate it. And I think it's going to be a good one. So right off the bat, your football journey as a coach and a player.
Okay, so let's go back. That's a long time, half a century. I'm 54 now. So no, the journey I had was unlike probably to a lot of the modern day people in English academies, probably very similar. As a young man, I wanted to be a professional soccer player. Went through the school, the district, the county stuff. Had some trials with some of the professional clubs for periods of time. Then I got to a situation where I knew I probably wasn't going to be good enough at that time. And if I knew now what I knew then, I probably could have made a good professional player. But that didn't happen for me. And then I sort of took a year out just to see really what I wanted to do in my life. I had a really good mentor at the time who was a school teacher, a guy called Peter Walsh. And he obviously saw something in me that I certainly didn't see. And he said to me that I got too much to give in football. And so my path was I went back into school teaching, went in and got my teacher's degree and got into school teaching. But what I did is during that time, I had a lot of good people around me that not only just got me football qualifications and referees qualifications, but I did it in swimming, diving, basketball, cricket and hockey. And then rugby as well, so that when I graduated when I was 23, I was already way down the path of, I'd done several coaching courses, which gave me a real good view of how children learn across the board. And then in the specific of soccer, I got into a couple of courses very early. So at 23, I probably had more qualifications than some senior people that had maybe just finished playing. And then I got back into playing at like a semi-pro amateur level and made my connections. And then so the school teaching part was just trying to get me back into learning about how children learn. And it really gave me my passion, if you like, for teaching and coaching. When I was 27, so 4 years after I got my degree, I was asked to become an athletics director at a top school in London, Westminster City, which is right next door to Buckingham Palace. And at the time it was 800 all boys, inner city kids from all around, multicultural. I got involved there, and I was just starting on my road to work with Crystal Palace, doing some stuff in their centre of excellence. And again, some people must have saw some leadership qualities in me. So I became head of physical education at 27, which is very young and quite unique. And then at the same time, almost, Crystal Palace asked me to become the centre of excellence director. So I was quite involved heavily in schools football at the district and county levels. And so I was coming across some of the players at Palace and some of the other London clubs through my school, which was in, as I said, central and south London. And then from there, Crystal, you know, when the Charter for Quality, then maybe a lot of your listeners don't know what that is, but Britain in 1996, Howard Wilson developed this Charter for Quality to restructure youth soccer all the way through for the professional ranks down. And I was very much involved in it because of my school connections and was very aware of it. And then Crystal Palace decided they wanted to become a top academy. So I helped Steve Coppell, who was the manager, famous Manchester United player and famous manager. He approached me and said, let's work together to try and get the blueprint together, which we did. And at the end of that, one of the roles within that was education and welfare officer, which needed to be a teacher's position. They offered me that job, which I accepted. And I worked alongside a guy called John Cartwright, who was another big mentor of mine. He worked at the National School at Lidshall. Very, very famous coach, youth coach in particular, one of the best ever. And got working with John. And then so I had 5 unbelievable years with him and the people at Crystal Palace. In Crystal Palace, I was there totally for 14 years. So it was an unbelievable time, and sort of saw it grow from a struggling Division 1 club all the way through to a Premier League club and then back down again. Then we sort of up and down a few times. But the feature was, we produced lots of players. So I was very lucky that a lot of the teaching skills that I learned, job descriptions, planning, doing curriculums and looking at individuals rather than teams, a lot of stuff I'd done as a teacher, I brought into the Palace arena, and it was very well received by the players, by the staff, up to the first team. So I did that, and then that was sort of really got me into it. During that time, I got all my badges, my A licence. I did the Academy Director's licence. I had the Youth Award, and I was actually lucky that I was involved in three courses where I helped deliver the course for the Premier League. Not deliver, but construct the course for the Premier League. One was an education and welfare one, which is no longer relevant. I think they still do the Academy Director's one, and then they still do the Youth Coaches Award, although it's got different stages. But I was involved in the conception of those. And the other thing that I really feel that I did that was very relevant was when I got involved at Crystal Palace, they wanted all the kids to do education first and be a soccer player. But it was very apparent very quickly that there was so much, the education people who were funding it wanted the kids to be almost like true scholars, a bit like the American college system. And there was too much time being taken away from them being soccer players. So what I did is I got with a British company called BTEC, and we developed a course specifically geared educationally for professional football players, which is still running today. We did it for a company called the Law Training Agency, and then BTEC picked it up. But that course is still running today, that the kids go through. It's changed and been adapted, but the core concept's there, that a lot of the things that the players do as players was given an educational value, and used that if they did fail, they could then jump back across into a university-type setting back in England. So from there, and then at 2003, I made a big jump. I came to America. That was more of a family decision. There was a few little things I wasn't agreeing with that was going on at the club at the time. There'd been many changes. So I decided to make a jump to America. I got involved in the Reading Rage, which is now part of Philadelphia Union. I actually bought it with some friends of mine in Bermuda, and we restructured the club there. And then in 2008, my Bermuda friends asked me to, I was actually asked them to go and apply for a job as the technical director of Bermuda to run the whole country. So I went to the interview really not thinking there was anything in it, if I'm really honest. But as luck would have it, they wanted someone to restructure their football from top to bottom. And they really needed someone with a youth background. So I think I beat some big hitters there to get that job. And that was a very challenging part of my career, because you've got to sort of run everything from the national team down to the little nippers. So I did that for a period of time. When the world funding crisis came, they couldn't afford to keep me on for another year, not because of my demands, just because of the culture and the way the government funding was being applied at the time. So I came back to America, done some soul searching, got involved, set up a little academy club myself, and then a good friend of mine asked me to come down to Charleston Battery, and there I've been there for a while. So the one thing I've watched a lot of people with similar backgrounds to me, and they've always wanted to use their youth development standpoint to go into the pros. That's never really been my passion. My passion has always been to get the kids from the youth programs up. People that know me very well will know I'm very passionate about it. I do believe now I'm old enough and I've got enough experience that I've got a formula that works. And although I'm not stuck in my ways, I'm trying to, help and share that here in America with everyone I sort of come in contact with.
No, fantastic. You hit something that I thought was very fascinating. When you were at Crystal Palace, you said the education first, and is the same model they have in the university system here. Something I was actually reading recently on Alex Ferguson, how he had his struggle at Man United, where he's like, they're making him go to school in the youth academy system, where I'm like, if their potential is to be a soccer player, forget the school, 24/7 has got to be soccer, okay? And I want, now that, the model is so congested in the NCAA, where they're playing so much and there's education around, I want to know, what's your opinion on that? Does that hinder development in the States based on this model?
Right. So I think what happened is, in England, the reason it became so much of a struggle was because the funding at the time, not now, but at the time, the funding came from the government. So it was through the professional footballers. It was a company called the FFE-VTS, which is the Further Footballers Association or Vocational Training Scheme, I think, if I'm right. So a lot of the funding came. So if they were using government money, they didn't want government money just going into soccer clubs. And soccer clubs back then weren't as well run as they are, certainly today. I mean, there was, it was the old pro, who just had stopped playing. His best mate became his assistant. And, when I first went to a Palace youth game, there was one physio, one assistant coach, one head coach, and a bus driver. That was the four. Now you go to an academy game under 12 and there's 4 or 5 people on the side. So the whole game's changed. But Alex Ferguson is right. The concept, that's why I said about that course. I was there 1 year, and I'm fighting the coaches because of a moral standpoint. We brought these kids in, our money was coming from the government, and the government were putting all these demands on players. And I went back to the government and said, listen, here's what's happening. You're bringing these kids in, and the footballers want them to be footballers. You want them to be academics, and the kids have got no chance, because if they scrap the soccer, they're not going to get a career, and then they've got to go back into mainstream education, and what you're providing them won't work. And then if they scrap the education and the football, they might not get to play because their funding could be cut. So what we did is, and that's why we went back to them and said, look, what you need to do is, as you improve the soccer culture, as you get coaches being more professional, and honestly, if you look at a professional soccer club now, there's more educated people in there than most banks, right? So it's changed. It wasn't then, but it's changed. So you needed to have something that supported the kids and gave the kids educational credits for what they were doing, because they were working with high-class physios, doing development plans, doing technical plans, doing biology plans, looking at their diet. I mean, it was all based around the individual. And soccer clubs took that on board, the government took that on board, and we changed. Now, when I came to America, I watch, and, professional footballers, even back then, were treated better than a lot of, not all the top colleges, but these sort of second and, lower, smaller colleges. These kids are travelling on a 15-seater passenger van and expecting to study whilst they're going backwards and forwards to games. And I think, as I said, it's the moral dilemma of trying to make sure these kids are educated. And then the schools would probably say, well, we provide the funding, so we want to make sure that our academic results don't suffer. But there's so many things wrong with, in my opinion, with the college game. I mean, the fact you play it in such a small season, I'm not so sure that it's even developmental. And if you want to quote me on something, so when I first came to America, and the boy, you might better chase, but the top boy player, the #1 ranked kid at the time was a boy called David Walters, and he played at Penn State. And I'd done a comparison to him, David Walters, to Wayne Routledge. And Wayne Routledge, who's now playing at Swansea City, but he played me. He was our sort of star player, played for England under 21s, 15. I'd done a comparison study to him at one of the the National Coaches Soccer Association of America. One of their things, I did a presentation. Wayne played something like between 16 and 21, or 16 and 20, 16 and 21, played something like 233 games at various levels, international, youth, whatever. David Walters played 76, and because he played in the top Division 1 college program. Wayne had trained something like an average of, I can't remember, it was 800 hours a year, whereas David Walters was like 230. So the two, you can't compare the two systems because they're completely different. And I think that in professional football, college soccer is a barrier for the kids. It's not a support, it's a barrier. And it worked for a while because there wasn't as many teams. But now America's really got the professional leagues going in the right direction. There's more opportunities. I think the amount of kids that could go straight to pro would not be missed in college soccer. And my feeling is this, that who says that you're finished as a scholar when you're 18 or 20, right? Like me personally, I didn't go back to college until I was like 19, maybe 20 at the time. People who I know went to college straight from school, didn't do half the things I did. So I traveled the world and done a lot of stuff. So to me, I think that in America, if you weren't a player by the time you were 21, that's the time when you go back to college. So I think that what we could do in America is really start from the professional soccer side, is look at, if there's a kid that we truly believe could be a soccer player, give him the best opportunity, or her, if it goes to the girls, give them the best opportunity to be a player. And then if they fail, then support them through college, not back to front. And I think that you wouldn't be talking about hundreds of kids. You're talking about, the select few that you truly believe can be the soccer player. That's how I think the American system should start to look at it. And I think that college soccer now has to really understand where they fit in the pecking order now. There's a lot of things above them. When I first came here in 2003, college soccer was still probably what everyone was aiming for. But now it's not. Now you've got all these pro clubs. Kids they'd be quite happy to bypass college. And I think some parents would even support that if there was a sort of safety net provision for them if they didn't make it.
No, I mean, you hit the hammer on the nail, Derek. I truly appreciate that. It's funny how you say that. I had a buddy that decided to go to a very big time Division I university. And then after he finished his 4-year, got his education, he's like, okay, I have a safety net. Like you just said, the safety net. He wanted to go to Germany to play. Not first division, third division. And then right off the bat, they asked him, what's your CV, resume? Where'd you play? Okay, what national team? No, I played at this Division I. How old are you? 22. That's too old. And you haven't played any national team caps, any youth academy teams. That's too old. So it's funny because they're in the system of, have you got your foot in the door at 14, 16? And after that, if you're going to go at 22, you're already a senior. So that's the fighting dilemma with that. So with that, I'm going to transition into our next question is the game heading in the right direction prior to the World Cup in 2026? Because you came at the perfect time before the DA started. And then when the DA started, and then recently the DA's folded, now they're rebranding it with the whole MLS. Are we heading in the right direction? Because that 2026 World Cup, it's going to be big time for the U.S. as well, too.
I've been very fortunate. I've worked at the national level, right? So when I was in Bermuda, we pulled off one of the biggest shocks. We beat Trinidad and Tobago in the World Cup. And we called it it was before when Jack Warner was involved, before all the FIFA scandals and that. But we done that, and I saw probably some of the things that I probably shouldn't have seen. And America in CONCACAF was the powerhouse, them and Mexico, and for them not to qualify for the World Cup out of these brackets is scandalous. But I think it was a true reflection of where American soccer was and is. So I think that this pandemic, and like I'm saying, has given everyone a chance to think. But me personally, I like the DA. You have to look at what the DA was set up for, right? So the DA at the time when there wasn't too many pro clubs and the pro leagues weren't really doing a great job, if I'm honest. And, you know, I was with the Reading Rage at the time, so I was in that system. So for me, the America back then didn't really have a plan. So what they did is they wanted it, I think, originally to build a national team. So hence they threw it out there. They threw out some minimum qualifications and or standards, not qualifications, minimum standards, and loads of clubs jumped on it. It was always the big clubs in the towns, and there was a lot of merging to get them there. But really, it should have been set up for a player development model. It should have been set up to produce players for the national team. And then what they did is they enforced a style of play that they tried to mandate across the board, which initially would have worked. But it would have been like England or France saying, we're going into all the clubs like Man United, Chelsea, Spurs, and so on. You've got to play one way to help the national team. Well, that would never work in England. England went the other way. They said, like, you can, all the academies, as long as you've got the minimum standards, create your own type of players and the national team will benefit. America went the other way. They said, right, everyone's going to try and play the same system, same thing. So, I don't think it was particularly managed that well. I think that, one, they went with too many academies straight away. They didn't really condense it down. There's a lot of different scenarios because of the size of the country. But if it was set up purely for player development, I don't think they hit all the buttons, hence why it failed. Rolled it forward now. I don't know that from what I've read that it's too different to what it was before. It's certainly fewer teams. And the question I would like to ask is, how was it set up? Was it because MLS is running it? Did MLS go right to every club? Did go and pick the best, you know, these DAs, tell me the best 10 that you want to play. How was the selection done on all these clubs? Or was it, let's pick the best well-run clubs that are not MLS to come in? But to come back to your question, do I think America's got it right heading into the World Cup? No, I don't. So here's what I think it should be. I think that, and I'm involved with USL a little bit, but I think USL and MLS need to work together. I think geographically, if they all build towards trying to establish a consistent games program for these kids that works regionally and is economic, those clubs have to come together. I believe that, like in everywhere in the world, the best kids should be funneled into the professional clubs. The trouble with that right now is that America doesn't have a transfer market. They're a trading nation. They do a lot of trading rather than selling and buying. I think there's been a few, you know, the Alvaron deal, Atlanta, you know, Pulisic has flashed. There's a few little trickles there, but still no one's really coming to America looking for players yet. You know, people pass through America, but there's no one coming here regularly hunting the players down for various reasons. But for me, I think the professional clubs have to step up and all work together. I think we need to filter all those players into there. And then in their regions, there needs to be some sort of regional league beneath them with all these old DA clubs that work together, that work to supply the pro clubs with players. So I go back to my Crystal Palace days. If we offered most kids in our area that they wanted to come, so we sponsored the biggest league, it was called the Tangiers League, 6,000 players. We would send our players in to do their prize givings or do the odd coaching session or give them discount tickets. But the reality was we used those to recruit players. And then if we got a player from one of the teams, we couldn't just give them money, but we could give them season tickets or a place on here or come to a special day at the field or whatever. So I think that model works because you've got to try and find a way to funnel the best players. And then if all the professional clubs are doing a great job developing players, America's going to benefit, right? And right now, you don't just want one-dimensional players. You don't just want a traditional six or whatever. You know, what's the difference between a Roy Keane and a Patrick Vieira or a Dunga? You know, like, and they're players of mine. But what they need to do is they need to develop their own style. And I think that the national team should focus purely on, there should be a small group of people that just work predominantly for the national team, going around to all those professional clubs and getting them to provide their best American players to come in. And then all they've got to do is worry about moulding all those kids together to form a team. And then my final comment on the national team program is America's got to stop trying to copy everyone else. America's got great qualities, right? And, you know, I read a little bit on your background. You know, you've been based here, but you've travelled a lot. So, you know, England failed for years trying to play. Every time England played Brazil, they played the most un-English-like game ever. We tried to play like Spain, and we didn't. Now Britain has really put England in particular has put a lot of time into their national team players. Now we do have the speed and the technique, and so we can adapt our styles. But back in the day, if Wimbledon back in their heyday would have been the national team for England, they would have probably beat most teams around Europe. But we went and played international football and then decided to play a different way. And I think at some point that changed. And I think America's caught up in that a little bit. They're trying to, do they play the German way or the Spanish way or the British way or the Dutch way or whatever? No, they need to play the American way because there is good qualities. They're very resilient. They're very athletic. You know, they don't have a creative number 10 right now. And the reason they don't is because a number 10 can't be creative because of high school, college, most club teams. No one wants a casual, lazy, creative number 10. They want a reliable, hard-working, Claudio Reyna type player. So those kids won't get a chance. So focus on what you're good at. Make yourselves hard to beat. Get through to the World Cup regularly and then really test yourselves in these events against better people. Because to me, they always do well in the Gold Cup, which is the prelude to it, which really a lot of other nations don't take that seriously. But when it comes to the World Cup, America really does well when it's extreme, when the heat's bad or there's loads of travelling. But when it went to Europe, and it was a level playing field for most of the countries, they struggled immensely.
No, I mean, I think you hit it right there. I think we're a land of immigrants. So I think we have a lot of English coaches, Hispanic coaches, different cultures. They don't know what is the identity. What is the identity of the U.S. in a sense like that? My take is going back to that number 10 player. I agree. I think that player, that pure 10, it is created on the streets. I think Johan Cruyff said, how many hours did he play with Ajax? How many hours did he spend a day in the streets? So I agree with that kind of 10 being created that way. The way we have basketball courts, left and right, if as a nation, U.S. soccer, if we incorporate futsal courts, does that impact that self-growth of a number 10, in your opinion?
Yeah, I don't think it's the environment we play. I do. I think it's, as I said, if you like, and I'll tell you now, even now, like my philosophy in Charleston is I want all our kids to run with the ball. I want the ball hogs, the greedy kids. And, you know, you have to really, I think soccer's an individual sport in the development years. I don't believe it's a team, but there's such a big focus on team winning, ranking, spots. But I've really stayed true to my word about individual development, long-term individual development. And, you know, a real creative 10 at the age of 8 and 9 is very hard to see. You know, you're really looking for the dribbler. Now no one end up being wingers. The real true 10's, the one that can link the game up and stay on the ball. And there's different types of 10. There's the Zidane 10, and then there's the Valderrama 10, and then there's the Maradona 10, and, you know, there's the Tevez 10. So there's lots of different versions of it. But over here, coaches don't want that kid to be staying on the ball too long. They don't want anyone making. You make a mistake, you're out, subbed. Come on, out you come. So there's no patience in coaching. And, you know, I've always been asked that question. Now, how do you teach creativity? And you don't teach it. You've got to allow it to happen. It's really about allowing mistakes. It's how you manage your mistake management. You know, how you let kids go on and fail. And, you know, if they fail once, it's okay. If they fail twice, if they fail 5 or 6 times, then yeah, you've got to go in incorrect. But we overcoach in this country. You can see it. The coach is God. You know, I saw a little thing on LinkedIn the other day about, you know, most of these coaches now learning the game through iPads. You know, and there isn't many. And even in England, like I go back home. Back in the day, there was great coaches on the grass who could go on and relate to the players and get. Now you've got these, you know, even if you go on it, it's all social media stuff showing, you know, look, do this drill where you've got like the graphics going from A to B to C. That's not soccer. You know, soccer's not an A to B to C player. And the 10 has to go from A to Z, or sometimes A to F, or A to A sometimes. And that doesn't fit into the culture here in America. You know, the parents don't like it because he's too greedy or she's too greedy or she makes too many mistakes, not reliable. And then what they do is they put someone in who's reliable, but nowhere near as creative. So I think that there's lots of cultural things that need to happen. the way you address it to basketball is spot on, because in Europe, we try and coach basketball because it's not a natural sport. So we produce a lot of bang average players. The best players here in America, and my son won a national title AAU basketball. So I went and watched them. It's the only time, I'm 6'5", and it's the only time I felt below height. But I go there, and all the kids there were unbelievable players, right? They were like great creativity. And if you speak to them, none of them were playing AAU until they were 14. So they learned. They learned to play in the streets, and there was no coaching. There was no one telling them what to do. There was no wrong answers. That's the best answer. There was no wrong answers. If they got it wrong, or no one was telling them it was wrong. And I think that's where street soccer comes in, and it's still prevalent in the South American countries. And I think a lot of the English clubs now are going back to this technical skills coach, which is really trying to recreate a street mentality, soccer. And then you can tell how bad it is here in America, because once we went into social isolation and everyone had to do Zoom calls, people were almost introducing one-on-one work as if it was revolutionary. I put a thing on LinkedIn like, this is what I did all the time. I had 3 sisters. No one ever taught me how to do games, and I had to create my own games. And again, when everyone was trying to sell a program to American kids about playing on your own, I'm telling you, you can't tell me someone taught you how to play on your own in the back garden. That was what we did. And as I said, when you do that, there is no wrong answers. Coaching here in America has become too directive, too one-sided, too prescriptive. And as I said, I don't think we see the practitioners as well as out here. We've got great lectures, great podcasts, but not great practitioners on the grass.
Well, I agree. I think it's spot on. Derek, our final question, I kind of tweaked it up. It's a message for players, coaches, and parents during this COVID-19. And how can we come together as a community in this pandemic, and obviously use the game to catapult into the future?
So the first thing is, someone's given us this time, rightly or wrongly, to stop the game. And if I really, listen, there's a lot of serious things going on in the world, but if I take it from a soccer perspective, we've been given this timeout. We've been given a timeout. And if we don't do anything in this timeout, if we just go back to doing what we've been doing, then we've wasted an unbelievable opportunity. And I don't believe, hopefully we don't get another opportunity under these circumstances again in my lifetime. But we've been given a chance to think. And I think that what's happened is, because the game is so highly developed as a business here, and a lot of businesses are struggling, people need to go back and look at the structure of the business that they're in, right? So the pay-to-play model, if ever there was a time it was going to be tested, it's now, right? It's being tested right now. So there's a lot of clubs struggling. And so if you take the 3 ingredients, and I will say football development's about 3 things, and 4 if you include the club. So it's club development, coaching development, player development, and parent education. They're the sort of 4, and I focus on the 3 because I'm in a club. So right now, if you're a player, be patient, do your work at home. Let's see how much you do love the game. Because, there's kids that, I don't like labelling kids, but if you talk about C and D level players, if that's how you rank them, those kids may not return to soccer in the way it is, not because they don't want to, just because their parents may not be able to afford the money to play soccer. And maybe some parents now will be thinking, dear me, I've been ripped off for a long time. I've been paying for a lot of money, a lot of promises that I don't need to have. I certainly think that the game's got to become more local. I don't think people will be travelling because of the nature of the pandemic that we're working on. So these regional leagues where they've been oversold and hyped up, I think they need to come down. And I think what that will do to parents is, when they realise that they're staying in state and playing more local kids, they might realise that the game isn't as bad as they thought it was, or that when they travel, the game isn't as good as they think they might be paying for. So that would be my message to parents and kids. Be patient and really start to assess what it is you want from the game. I think the clubs have got to come together. They've got to stop competing, because I think some of them are going to be in real danger of going out of business. and they may have to look a lot at themselves as to how they pay salaries, where they put their resources and how they put their resources. And then from the club standpoint is this time's giving you a chance to really to take a massive time out and start to look at what you're saying you're doing, are you doing? And I had a conversation with the Charleston Battery CEO, Mike Kelleher, just as I was driving to come to do this podcast. And I said to Mike that we're doing an LMA course. As all my coaches are doing a League Managers Association course from England. All the American coaches are doing it on Talent ID. And one of the things is you've got to really work out what is it you want to, what do you want to be? And I don't think if you're not linked directly to a pro club, why do you focus on player development? Because it's the thing to do. Like, why can't you just be the best team in your state? Why can't you just go to be the best team or club in your area, right? I think, as I said, to me, if all the best players who really want to make a career in the game want to go that, if they're all under the pro banner, what's wrong with just saying I want to be the best team in Charleston, and then if I'm the best team, I want to go and be the best team in South Carolina, and that's not to say that player development can't happen like that, but I think people are actually frightened to say that's what they want to do. And like when I was at Crystal Palace, my job was not to win the Youth Cup, not to win the Premier Youth League. My job was to get players into the first team. That's how I was judged. That's how my bonus was. So that was my role. And when I was in the school association, I had to produce the regional team to go and try and win the national thing. So I wasn't trying to develop players. I did develop players because that was the nature of what we did. But my job was to win the next level. If I was a first team manager, I've got to win. They ain't got time to develop. They ain't got time to be sympathetic. They've got to win. So I think what we need to really assess here and clubs have got to look at is, if you're looking, you can still develop players and try and win, but why are youth clubs so adamant of servicing colleges? If we do a good job, colleges are going to be the beneficiary. If there was 1,000 kids trying to be pros and only 100 get taken on, 900 players are going to go and play really good D1 college, right? So if I'm a club team and I'm not involved in them 1,000 players, I might get the odd rough diamond that might jump into the pros, the freak kid, but they happen in every sport. But the reality is then let's just focus on trying to be the best club, produce the best players, but produce the best teams and focus on teams. And I think that those two methodologies can coexist together. In England, the pro clubs are really trying to produce individual players. In the thriving youth leagues, they're not worried about producing players. They're trying to win leagues. And some, you get the odd freak kid that leaves at 16 from the local club and can go and play in the pros, or can leave the semi-pro club and join the pro. But they're few and far between nowadays. I mean, Jamie Vardy's a classic case, right? Everyone's heard his story. But I'm saying here, America needs to start thinking about that. So my message to the clubs is, pick one of those two and follow it. So if you want to win leagues and have the best teams and that's your mantra, then tell the parents that's what you're trying to do. And kids that sign up for that know that unless they're in the top 11, they're going to be a sub and they're going to have to travel. Because if you try and sell that program under the player development model and you go to try and win games and you travel and that kid only gets 10 minutes on the field, then you're conning that kid. Whereas if you go into youth development and you say, then don't go and just try and win games. Go there and make sure every kid gets equal playing time and every kid gets the same amount of time on the field. And you may have to play around with the length of the game or the structure of the game. So I think that's what I'd like to see. And I'd like to see the pro clubs really step up and take the real elite youth development part on board. And then I'd like the clubs to fall in behind that and have good training programs, good coaching education programs, but don't always hide behind the player development banner when it's really not your focus.
Fantastic. Final thing, we're going to finish it out with your favorite team of all time and your favorite player of all time.
Right, so I'm asked this one. My favourite player of all time, and I've got a little insight, was Eric Cantona, right? For the reasons we spoke about earlier, like I want to create an unpredictable player. I want to play. I've done some research, and I had some friends that were around the United and Leeds United. And if you talk to people about business, like, why was he so... No one heard of Eric Cantona before he went to Man United, really, although some people did, but really... But he was so unpredictable. If you've obviously read Ferguson's book. He was the hardest player to manage, and he got the most out of him. He allowed it to be... So to me, it typifies my actual coaching philosophy. Take the maverick player who doesn't conform, but is a genius on the field. And I've got a video of him where he can head, shoot, volley, tackle, foul, get sent. I mean, I was at the game when he kicked the supporter. To me, he just had everything. He wasn't the quickest, but he was an unbelievable footballer. So he was my best all-time player for what he did on the field and for how he was developed. And I think I build my coaching philosophy around how he was developed. He was a maverick. And I told you, that's why when I come to America, I don't need the kids that want to say yes, please, no. I want the maverick kid. I think it's the same in basketball. You know, they need that edge to be as creative as they can be, and they need to have their own personality. I think they've got to be a little bit obnoxious sometimes. So he's my all-time favourite player for what he did on the field and for how. Because I don't think anyone developed him. I think he developed himself. But if you actually read his book and listen to him, a lot of people had a big influence on him. And the game, everything he talked about was around the game. He experimented, he tried, he did that. And he wanted people, he thrived under people that thrived around him. And Ferguson was the main one. So, favourite player, favourite all-time team. So, again, I'll do it in two phases. Best all-time team, youth team I ever saw, West Ham United youth team with Joey Cole, Rio Ferdinand, and all that group, the team that won it. The best youth team I've ever seen. Again, creative, had everything. And a lot of people won't know what I'm talking about, but people in England that saw that youth, I think Frank Lampard come out of it, Joey Cole, Rio Ferdinand, and Manu Amini. There's loads. So that team was best youth team I ever saw. Best football team I saw live, Liverpool in the 80s, Dalglish, Rush, Keegan, I mean, it was involved, Alan Hansen. So that was the best team I ever saw live. And then I watched some video of the Brazil team with Pelé, and it's just video. So I would say very, very hard, just, again, played without any restrictions and totally flowed. And I was very lucky in my life. I got to meet Zagallo and Herrera, who were the coaches of those teams at the time, and spoke to them, and they said it was the easiest coaching job they ever had. Their fitness coach had the hardest job, but they just had to knit them together. So that would my best youth team, definitely West Ham youth team there, fantastic. It had everything. Liverpool in the 80s, Cantona, and Brazil.
Fantastic. Derek, thank you so much of giving your perspective of the game. It was truly a pleasure. Anything you want to add into this podcast on your end?
No, listen, I mean, obviously I'd love the link. I'll share it on my on our website, Charleston Battery and the Charleston Soccer Club. So we'd love to share that. And keep this time. It's great that you're doing stuff like this. And I think that, I've watched more, I'm sure you have, I've watched more podcasts in the last couple of weeks, especially with the state of the game and the return to play. And my only message to everyone if people are watching this is, let's not rush straight back. Let's take our time, get back. When we go back, let's make sure when we go back, we remain staying back. There's no point in going back for 2 weeks and then shutting down again. So let's really make sure that when we go back, we're back for the entire time. And let's make sure that we don't go back to doing what we were doing before the pandemic. Let's make some changes. All right?